My children were frantically calling the police in London, searching all over Surrey for my body, as if they'd lost their minds. But what they could never have imagined was that, at this very moment, I was standing alone on the steepest cliffs of Cornwall, leaning on my cane, laughing into the roaring sea wind. I am 70 years old. Last Tuesday, I packed a bottle of unfinished sleeping pills into a deep blue suitcase, locked my front door, and disappeared completely. I did not bring those pills because I planned to die on the road. I brought them because I realized that if I continued living in that mansion silent as a graveyard, I would not even need to swallow them. My body and soul were already being strangled to death by endless waiting. To many people, abandoning everything at my age must have seemed like the madness of a senile old woman. But what they never understood was that, inside that elegant little house that symbolized dignity and refinement, I had spent 5 entire years as a prisoner. Every day, my only task was dusting lifeless relics from the past over and over again, my husband's gold watch that had long since stopped ticking, the yellowing wedding dress folded inside the cedar chest, and the afternoon tea I prepared again and again for the children who never arrived, tea that always ended up dry cold and thrown into the rubbish bin. The last time my daughter Emily visited was Easter of last year. She did not even have time to unbutton her coat before anxiously answering 3 phone calls beside the armchair. Altogether, she stayed for only 17 minutes. As for my son Leo, he only sent perfectly formatted greetings by post. In one of his letters, he even reminded me to take good care of the dog that had already died 3 years ago. Then came last Tuesday. I struggled home through the rain beneath a heavy black umbrella, dragging my arthritic knees step by step back into that terrifyingly quiet house. I sat in the armchair and watched the shadows of the sunset slowly retreat into darkness. And at last, I woke up completely. That beautiful, respectable house was nothing more than a luxurious coffin lined with velvet cushions, and I was inside it, dressed in my finest clothes, quietly waiting to die. I had spent years protecting every memory of the past, yet somehow lost the one thing that truly belonged to me, my own life. So the next morning I locked that heavy front door. I packed a small navy suitcase with a few changes of clothes, my softest pair of flat shoes, and 2 novels I had never managed to finish. Then I went straight to the train station and bought a one-way ticket to an old seaside town in Cornwall. As the train began to move, the wheels clattered against the tracks. Outside the window, buildings and endless grey rain slowly faded into wide green fields. I looked at my reflection in the glass, and for the first time in years, tears finally fell, not from sorrow, from relief. I arrived in an old coastal town in Cornwall. Inside the hostel's communal kitchen, thick with the smell of wet raincoats, cheap beer, fish and chips, and sea air, I experienced my rebirth. To give myself a sense of safety in that unfamiliar place, I had brought along the only rose-patterned bone china teacup left from my marriage. But when I poured hot water into it, my trembling fingers lost their grip. The cup crashed onto the hard stone floor and shattered into pieces. The young backpackers around me barely glanced over before continuing their conversations and laughter. At that moment, there were no servants rushing to help me, no children hurrying to lift me from the floor. I could only crouch down slowly through the pain in my knees and gather the tea, stained fragments one by one with trembling hands. As I stared at those sharp pieces resting in my palm, I suddenly wanted to cry, because I realized that the old age I had spent 5 years desperately trying to hold together was just like that cup, already broken. I threw the pieces into the rubbish bin, though one small shard accidentally slipped into the pocket of my coat. Without my teacup, I had no choice but to take a chipped blue ceramic mug from the communal cupboard and pour myself a cup of free black coffee. It was the first black coffee I had ever tasted in my life. It was slightly bitter, even rough around the edges, but it warmed my stiff fingers. I sat in the corner holding that broken mug, watching the young people in worn jeans strumming guitars and singing folk songs. They lived so recklessly, never caring whether their cups matched or whether their manners appeared elegant. Yet in their eyes, I saw the vitality I had lost 30 years ago. By evening, I decided to follow the others and walk toward the cliffs beyond the town. No one paid any attention to a slow, moving old woman. The sea wind sliced through my carefully styled hair like tiny knives, leaving it wild and tangled. I leaned on my cane, listening to it scrape softly against the wet gravel. Every step made my joints ache in protest, but I did not stop. And finally, I stood alone at the edge of the cliffs, facing the black rocks of the Celtic Sea and the violent, crashing waves below. Salt clung to my face, cold and sharp. Then I touched the forgotten shard of porcelain still hidden inside my coat pocket. On it was painted the red rose of Surrey. Against the endless ocean, that tiny piece of porcelain suddenly seemed so small and so absurd. I opened my hand and let it fall. In an instant, it disappeared into the white foam below. The moment my palm became empty, I took the deepest breath I had breathed in 5 years. For the first time, the air reached the very bottom of my lungs. I looked out at the endless blue horizon, and tears finally streamed down my face. Then, all at once, I understood. The home I had clung to so desperately, the elegant tea set, the expectations I held for my children, those things had already shattered long ago. For years, I kept trying to glue the pieces back together, only to trap myself inside the ruins. My old life had fallen apart, but perhaps that also meant I was finally free to build an entirely new version of myself. And once my heart stopped curling up inside that lonely corner waiting for phone calls, my body began to come alive again as well. My knees no longer ached the same way. I no longer needed sleeping pills. Every night I slept deeply on the hostel's wooden bed. 2 days ago, Emily called me in a panic. "Mother," she asked anxiously, "when are you coming home?" "The garden needs tending. The weeds are almost reaching the windows." I looked out across the rolling coastline and answered calmly, "Let the weeds grow wild, darling. I'm not coming back. I've decided to remain on the road." Cornwall was only the beginning. I have now spent more than half a year travelling. I wandered through the Scottish Highlands, watching black mountains stretch endlessly through rain and mist while my clothes soaked through at the edges. I visited the Irish countryside, drinking dark beer in little pubs while bagpipes echoed through the night air. I no longer intend to return to that empty house filled with nothing but dust and waiting. I will keep travelling. I will stay in unfamiliar inns, walk unfamiliar roads, and search for unfamiliar landscapes. Inside that silent house, I was lonely in the most humiliating way, a loneliness abandoned by time itself. But on the road, inside the unknown world, my soul feels full, free. Loving our children does not mean sacrificing the few remaining years of our lives as collateral for endless waiting. So if you, at this very moment, are also sitting alone in a room so quiet that it unsettles your heart, watching the evening shadows slowly sink into darkness, then I want to ask you something. Are you truly living? Or are you simply waiting? If you can please stop waiting, open that door. Step outside, just as I did, because life, at long last, belongs to us again. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope all of us can learn to cherish ourselves a little more. And perhaps someday, on a bench somewhere along the road ahead, we may meet again. Goodbye.